You know what it's like when something has been sitting on your proverbial doorstep and you've been too blind to even notice it. And then one day you wake up and discover it's there, and you wonder how you could ever have missed it. Well, I had one of those wake-up moments this week when I was searching the map looking for something totally different. And there it was, something I had walked past on numerous occasions and had never taken on board. Zhongshan Park, the former imperial garden lying just southwest of the Forbidden City. And what a place it turns out to be. It's called Zhongshan for a reason. It's named in honor of the father of modern China, Sun Yat-sen, who is known as Sun Zhongshan in Chinese. You can find Zhongshan parks in more than 40 cities in China, including Shanghai, Hong Kong, Dalian, Shenyang and Shenzhen. But this one really stands out. As they say on all those boring house makeover programs on Western TV stations, it's all about location, location and location. And being literally a few meters from the Forbidden City, you couldn't get a better location if you tried. Don't listen to some of the rubbish spouted by the likes of China.org.cn, and I quote, "Just a few steps away from the glorious Tian'anmen Square and pompous Forbidden City, Zhongshan Park is the place where you can find peace of mind and body harmony." Oh, yuck. And as for some of the morons who write on TripAdvisor, such as, "In the park itself there isn't a lot to do next to stopping at the local restaurant," oh, please. In my opinion, this has to be one of the best parks in the entire city of Beijing, one worth returning to over and over again. And unlike some websites that tell you the entrance is 10 RMB, you can ignore them as well, as it's a mere 3 kuai. Zhongshan Park is a classic commemorative garden covering 60 acres, and was formerly the temple of national prosperity during the Ming dynasty. Inside there are numerous pavilions, gardens and temples, and it's where emperors worshipped the god of land and the god of grain. It's also famous for many old cypress trees, some of which are over 1,000 years old. In 1914, it was turned into a public park, making it the first such garden in Beijing. It was named after Dr. Sun in 1928. Today, however, your favorite podcaster makes his intrepid way on the subway system to Tian'anmen West on Line 1. The entire area is filled with people, as always. Some are heading into the square itself. Some are jostling their way into the Forbidden City. But almost devoid of any people is the entrance to this wonderful garden, literally a handful of meters to the west of Mao's famous mugshot. This is the southern entrance, and by far and away the best way to get in. The other entrances aren't nearly as impressive. Straight ahead is a white marble memorial archway erected by the Qing government to commemorate the German minister Baron von Kettler, who was killed during the Boxer Rebellion of 1900. After Germany's defeat in World War I, it was inscribed with the words, "Triumph of Righteousness." Then, after 1949, it was reinscribed with "Defend the Peace." Not, as China.org.cn would have you believe, defeat the peace. Hence its popular name nowadays of Peace Defending Arch. Slap bang through the central archway is a bronze statue of Sun Yat-sen, which I suppose is fair enough given that the park is given over to his honor. You recall that Dr. Sun Yat-sen, who lived from 1866 to 1925, was a Chinese revolutionary thinker and political leader who was one of the founders of the Kuomintang, and the first provisional president when the Republic of China was founded in 1912. He was, of course, a key figure in the 1911 revolution, which brought down the Qing dynasty and ended imperial rule in China. On the mainland, Sun is widely regarded as the father of modern China. When he died, his body was placed in Zhongshan Hall for people to pay their last respects. It's the start of November, and with the weather suddenly shooting down some 10 degrees in the past week, Beijing's incredibly short autumn has begun. In a couple of weeks there'll be no leaves on the trees, but right now they're all changing into glorious shades of reds and oranges and yellows. It brings out the romantic in me, and as a perfect backdrop one can see many of the buildings of the Forbidden City just behind. The Chinese seem to love rocks and large stones to decorate their gardens, perhaps none more so than the Ming Dynasty Emperor Qianlong. If anyone knew the difference between a rock and a hard place, it had to be old QL for sure. Slightly to the northeast of Dr. Sun's statue, you will come across one of Qianlong's pride and joys, something he called Green Lotus Rock. It's supposedly one of the best of its kind in Beijing's gardens. In 1751, during his first visit to the south, Emperor Qianlong saw this rock and loved it so much that he had it sent back to Yuanmingyuan in Beijing. In 1927, it was moved to Zhongshan Park. It's said that after it has rained, it has a beautiful interlaced grain and takes on a colour of light pink, which resembles the clouds at sunset. The white dots in the grain appear like snowflakes. So why green lotus, you may be wondering? Well, in Buddhist scripts, green lotus represents wisdom, as in green lotus in the eyes. Another of Qianlong's favourites was Slice of Dark Clouds, and is one of Beijing's more famous garden stones. This specimen is 3 meters high, 3.3 meters long, and has a perimeter of 7 meters. The inscription, Slice of Dark Clouds, and 8 accompanying poems were written by the emperor too. You can see that our friend Qianlong led a very exciting life. One of the most attractive aspects of this park, I think, is the plethora of covered walkways linking the various pavilions. They're all smothered in little scenes of which no two look the same. One has lovely pussycats, not to mention bug-eyed goldfish. I think they're superb. Classic-style Chinese storks naturally also make an appearance. Once you get to the northern end of the park, you find your way blocked by the moat of the Forbidden City itself. On a still day like today, it looks stunning with the trees reflected in the water. The moat, or tube river, Tongzihe, is also known as the Imperial River, Yuhe, and, according to the official websites, is used for ice skating in the winter and boating during the summer and autumn. Obviously, the site owners haven't paid much attention to a notice that is prominently displayed, although perhaps they make a distinction between skating on the water and skating in the water. Just to the south of the moat is the Maxim Pavilion, which was built in 1915. It's a round-shaped 8-pillar pavilion designed in the Western style, apparently. At 8 meters high and 6.6 meters in diameter, sayings from ancient celebrities were carved onto the 8 pillars, hence its name. Further towards the south again, I come across the waterside greenhouse. Originally erected in 1915, it was rebuilt in 1936 and covers 417 square meters. The roof is covered with peacock blue glazed tiles and is said to look like a bird's wings. In the middle is an octagonal pavilion with double eaves. Inside, apparently, one can find 39 varieties of tulips, presented to the park in 1977 by Princess Beatrix of the Netherlands, who later became the reigning queen. I particularly like the stone lions, which weigh over 4,400 kilograms and were discovered in 1918 and donated to the park. Deemed to be artifacts from the Song dynasty of 1,000 years ago, staff at the park buried them during the Cultural Revolution in order to protect them from the excesses of the Red Guards. They were finally re-excavated in 1971 for public viewing. Soon after, I come to something called the Lanting Tablet Pavilion, an octagonal pavilion less than 100 years old, with double eaves and again covered with peacock blue-glazed tiles. Central to the whole park, of course, is Zhongshan Hall, used by countless emperors since 1421 as a resting place during sacrificial ceremonies they would perform twice a year, in the springtime to bring about a good harvest, and in the autumn for Thanksgiving. The hall was also a great place to perform the ceremony itself if it decided to rain that day. Nowadays, in keeping with the park's dedication, there's a white marble statue of Sun Yat-sen inside the hall, over 2 meters high, together with an exhibition displaying some of his manuscripts, clothes, books, seals, daily items, and other stuff. However, as I've seen other collections of Dr. Sun's stuff, I don't feel it necessary to fork out any extra for the privilege today. Right in front of the hall is the square-shaped altar of land and harvest, consisting of 3 levels built in white marble. In ancient China, Shi was the god of land and Ji was the god of grain. Shi and Ji were thus regarded as essential to the prosperity of the country. On the top altar surface there are 5 colours of soil: blue to the east, red to the south, white to the west and black to the north, and yellow in the centre, indicating all the land under the sun belongs to the emperor. In the centre of the platform stands a so-called sovereign stone, signifying that the emperor's reign would be everlasting, just like the mountains and the rivers. I somehow think they must have had huge egos, those emperors. From the 19th year of Yonglu's reign in the Ming dynasty, the 3rd year of Xuantong's reign in the Qing dynasty, 1,300 worship rites were conducted, either personally by the emperors of the 2 dynasties or by their senior officials. Now, I reckon it must have been a pretty harrowing ordeal to be presented to the emperor, especially if one didn't hobnob with the good and the great on a regular basis. So yet another pavilion was built in this park, this one known as the Protocol Rehearsal Pavilion. It's hexagonal and has yellow glazed tiles, red lattice and stone steps, and was built in 1420. It was used as the place where officials and chiefs of minorities and envoys from abroad would practice their first audience with the emperor. I guess it didn't pay to mess with the top boss. A little to the east, one comes to the quietest spot in the park, the area of the Lotus Pool, Waterside Pavilion, Pavilion of 4 Contentments, and the Pavilion to welcome the sunshine. And it really is idyllic. Who could fail to be moved by the vistas of weeping willows and tranquil reflections? Kids are not ignored in the overall plans of the park either. There has to be one of the poshest bumper car pavilions in the world, not that the little mites probably appreciate it when they're driving hell for leather into one another. Like most parks in China, Zhongshan gives itself over both morning and evening into a gym or a dance studio. Though whether the people are dancing or exercising, it's often difficult to say. I particularly like the slow-motion sword dancing that many women are performing. It has an elegance that is hard to turn away from. I'm left wondering if they're rehearsing for a performance or whether this is just by way of a little fun for them. Not everyone is into exercise, of course, though some people are enjoying exercising their vocal cords as they warble in multi-part harmony. I mentioned before that there are a number of old trees dotted around the park. According to my research, there are 304 Class A ancient trees and 308 Class B ancient trees here, though what differentiates A from B I have no idea. The majority of them are cypresses lined up around the altar walls. Most were planted when the altar of land and grain was built, so that makes them well over 600 years old now. On the southern side of the altar area are 7 really ancient cypresses with a history of over 1,000 years. They are so large that it is said that it takes 3 or 4 persons with arms outstretched to encircle the trunk. Throughout Zhongshan Park, the planners have done their best to make foreign tourists feel welcome, and there are numerous signs in English, Russian and Korean in addition to the Chinese. So it's very difficult to get lost if you simply follow the signs. But I decide to leave this fabulous park from the south gate, as my next port of call is Tian'anmen Square. It's just coming up to the time of the CPC's National Congress, the 18th, and thanks to the Beijing Gardening and Greening Bureau, the square has become the proud venue for one of the tackiest flower arrangements ever. According to the blurb board underneath it, there's a 15-metre-high monstrosity that is meant to represent blessings for our motherland, and apparently it lights up colourfully at night. Other floral displays in contrast, however, are really rather nice, and there's a veritable army of workers putting the finishing touches to flower columns, temporary lawns and flower beds. So at least Congress delegates inside the Great Hall of the People will have something nice and colourful to feast their eyes on when the excitement inside the main hall gets too much for them. Naturally, with so much preparation still to be done before the start of the Congress, they don't want any old Tom, Dick or Harry, or should that read Chun, Ching or Chun, walking into the Great Hall, so the normal exit from Tian'anmen to the Great Hall of the People is closed off to the general public, while officious-looking security officials patrol up and down on their Segway scooters. Unless you think that high-tech scooters are just for the privilege, think again. Even the garbage collectors ride around on electric tricycles, picking up the trash that is casually dropped by the rubbernecking day trippers. As always, there's a huge video wall in the middle of the square extolling the virtues of the motherland. For the Congress, its content has been beefed up significantly. As I pass by, there's footage of the attractions of Xinjiang being shown, a large, sparsely populated region in the northwest of the country, about the size of Iran, and making up about a sixth of the country in area. The scenery looks wonderful, straight out of a picture postcard book. But not surprisingly, there's no mention of the unrest in that region that continues to be one reason for so many numbers of Beijing's troops to be stationed there. So your sympathies must go out to the marketers who put together this slice of tourist heaven for all to see. You can almost imagine the scene as the ad executive racks his brains for a suitable slogan to sell the idea of Xinjiang to prospective tourists. "I've got it," he tells his long-suffering wife over his dinner one evening. "Xinjiang is a nice place." To the point, short, pithy and succinct, which all goes to prove what a creative and exacting profession advertising is all about. Take me to the nearest tourist office.